Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I wanted to take a look at just one embossing folder and show you 5 different ways we can use that same folder. So first of all, let's take a look at the embossing folder we're going to be using. So this particular one came free with a Simply Cards and Papercraft magazine. It was issue 201 and this is the Floral Hearts 5 by 7 inch cut and emboss folder. So this also came with a coordinating 17-piece stamp set. So we're using a couple of these stamps in our cards today. So let's take a closer look at the embossing folder itself. So as you can see, it's got the design on the front, just so you can see what it's going to look like once you've passed it through your die cutting machine. You have one side which is embossed and the other which is debossed, so you can use both sides of this. And it also has this love heart die embedded into the embossing folder itself. So with one pass through your die cutting machine, it will emboss and cut that love heart out of the middle. So the first way we're going to be using this embossing folder is to cut it down, so not using it as a 5 by 7 card. So as you can see here, I've got some gold mirror cards. I think this is going to pass through this embossing folder really nicely. I've cut it to 5 by 7, so it fits perfectly within this embossing folder. But like I said, the card we're going to create, we're only going to use part of our embossed piece. So off camera, I've just passed this through my die cutting machine, and let's have a look at the results. So this gold mirror card has embossed really well through this embossing folder, and you can see that love heart has come out perfectly from the centre of our card. So I think using the gold mirror card, I think with this design, it looks super elegant, and I think this will make a really, really beautiful card. I really love the cut and emboss elements to this embossing folder because it's cut that love heart out absolutely beautifully, and if you were to cut this again and again and again, it would always be exactly the same. So I'm not going to be using the love heart in the card with this panel, but I will definitely be keeping it to use it on another project. So for this first card, like I said, it's not necessarily a technique, it's just showing you that you don't have to keep this as a 7 by 5 piece. So what we're going to do is cut it down. So you can see here, this one I've already cut, and you can see if I line it up just how much I've taken off to get that love heart in the centre of this square. So you don't have to keep this as a 7 by 5 piece, you can absolutely cut this down and create whatever card size you want. So let's go ahead and pop a card together using this square panel. So again, I'll be making a square card. As you can see, I've just used that love heart stamp and used some white embossing powder and stamped that where our love heart is being cut out from our panel. I've also got that with love sentiment as well, just to finish the card off. So with the panel that we've embossed, all I'm going to do is just pop it on some foam pads just to give the card a little bit of dimension and a little bit of interest. And then all we're going to do is just line up our cutout heart with the heart that we've stamped. So it's super easy to get it in line. And just to finish it off, this with love, which again I've heat embossed with some gold embossing powder. So I think this card is super elegant. I think the colour scheme that we've used, again, would work really well for Valentine's Day, wedding cards, anniversary cards. I just think it's a really quick and easy card, and it's brilliant for one of those last minute makes. So the next thing we're going to do with our embossing folder is colour in our design. So I've just got some plain white cardstock here. Again, I've cut it down to 7 by 5, and I've just run it through my die cutting machine. So you can see, just using some plain white cardstock, it's cut and embossed that absolutely beautifully. So again, we've got our love hearts. Again, we're not going to be using this on this card, but I will be keeping it for any future projects that I need. So as you can see, this isn't, I think this is only 200 GSM cardstock, but it has embossed beautifully. And like I said, we're just going to colour in our floral design. So we're just going to colour in a small section of this panel because I've already got one that I've coloured in fully. So this is just to show you sort of what you can do. So I'm using my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend pens. So we have got the purple blend, we've got dark red blend and the citrus green blend. And all we're going to do is just colour over the embossed side, so the raised side of the design. So what you want to be careful with is not to sort of press too hard. I'm pressing quite lightly, sort of in small strokes, because it does tend to bleed out just a little bit. So as you can see, I'm just following the leaf design with my green at the moment and just colouring in over the top of this design. So I do sort of get the feel that this embossing folder is one of those like folk designs with the flowers. It sort of reminds me of a colourful embroidery. So that's how I'm going to sort of colour in following that kind of theme. So I've picked this green, like I said, the citrus green, so really nice bright green colour. So with all of this that we're going to be colouring in, I'm not going to be sort of taking too much care in terms of trying to blend these to get the shadows and the highlights. I'm just going to lay down the light colour, and then I'm going to come in and just put the dark colour over the top just a little bit, and trying to add a little bit of detail to it. So I love how this is coming together already, but like I said, I'm just going to colour in this small section just to give you an idea of sort of how I coloured it, and then I can show you my full panel. So just by adding that little bit of dark line in there, I think that really sort of adds to the design. So here's the completed panel that I've done, and again, I absolutely love this. I just think this reminds me of that colourful embroidery, like I said, something that you might embroider onto like a denim jacket or your jeans or something. I think this is a really fantastic way of using your embossing folders and just creating something a little bit different. So we're going to go ahead and create a shaker card using this panel. So the embossing folder is 7 by 5 inch. So if you have a blank card base that is that size, it's going to cover the whole front piece. So what I've done here is just created a card blank of my own that's just slightly bigger, so you've got the sort of border around the edge. So like I said, we're going to make a shaker card. So I've got some sequins here, and I've got some funky foam which I've just put through the embossing folder. So don't forget, you could also do this and create a really big stamp using this sort of funky foam. So I'm going to be using this funky foam instead of using foam tape to create our shaker window. So I've put this through the embossing folder because I want to get that love heart in the exact same place and get it the same shape. So let's go ahead and put our shaker card together. So I'm using this foam panel instead of the foam tape because it'll give my card a nice even raise, and it will support the whole of that front panel. So all we're doing here is adhering our front panel to our foam, and then with the acetate, I'm just going to put my anti-static bag across it, just so all my sequins don't sort of get stuck to the acetate and they shake freely. So with a shaker card, you want to create like a barrier, so all of your sequins or glitter, whatever it is that you're putting inside your shaker element, doesn't come free. So because I've used this foam panel instead of using the foam tape, I don't need to create as much of a barrier and make sure it's as secure as you normally would, because it's by my foam panel. So all that's left to do to create this shaker card is to pop our sequins in and just get them into the right space. So you don't want to have any that are sort of piled too high, because your pile will then get stuck within your shaker card and won't move about freely. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you're not going to be sort of sticking your double-sided tape over, or your foam tape over any of the sequins where then they get stuck in the sides. You want to make sure it's all within your window space to move around freely. So just to finish this card off, we're going to add a little sentiment. So we've got this keep smiling sentiment here. We're just going to pop across the love heart. So I absolutely love this card. I think colouring in that embossing folder is absolutely brilliant, and I'll definitely be using it again on other embossing folders. I just think it looks lovely, perfect for spring. Definitely my favourite card out of all of them today. So let's take a look at our next technique. So with this, we're going to be stenciling our cardstock before we put it through our embossing folder. So this is just a stencil that I've made myself, and like I said, we're going to ink through this, then we're going to pop it through. So I've got my 7 by 5 inch blank cardstock here. So again, all of the cardstock I'm using, I've already cut down to 7 by 5. So by doing this, what I'm hoping to create is almost highlight sections to sort of bring out small sections of our embossing folder. So as you can see here, I'm just inking through with the Tim Holtz Distress ink, and this is the mustard seed colour. I'm going sort of heavy in the corners and then coming in lighter in the middle. Don't forget, we'll be cutting out that love heart from the middle, so we don't need to worry too much about that section. But I want it to be just a little bit heavier on the edges and come in lighter. So we're happy with the stenciling now. We can go ahead and put this into our embossing folder and run it through our die cutting machine. So I have experimented using different stencils, and I found this one was the best one. But I mean, have a go with whatever stencil you've got at home just to see what works best. So as you can see, this is embossed really lovely again into our cardstock, and just those yellow little highlights are just sort of bringing your eye to those sort of different sections of the design. And I think this looks really lovely. I think it's a little bit more unusual sort of having that pattern with the embossing folder pattern, but I think it works really nicely. And once again, it's cut out that love heart beautifully. So again, you can use it, reinsert it into your panel, or keep it for a future project. So let's go ahead and pop our card together. So I'm going to be using this decoupage topper on the card, and it's going to cover our die cut love heart. So like I said before, the embossing folder is 7 by 5 inch. If you want to put that on the same size card, you'll just have to trim down your panel just slightly so you can get that matte and layered look. So by covering that love heart, I'm still using the same product, but my finished card is going to have a different look to the other cards that we've created. So this is another great way of using the same products and utilising them in different ways. I really love this pattern on pattern background. I don't think one distracts from the other. I think it really sort of helps lift that embossed design. I think with that spotted stencil, it's almost like a spotlight on different sections of the embossing folder and sort of helps draw your eye into different sections of it. I'll definitely be trying this with more stencils. Okay, so let's move on to our next technique. So in this technique, we're going to be rubbing our ink pads over our embossed design. So once again, I've just ran through my 200 GSM cardstock through the embossing folder. So this technique will work for both the embossed and debossed side of this panel, but we're going to be using the embossed side for our card today. So all I've done is gone ahead and picked two coordinating ink pads. So I've got my Prism World of Colour ink pads, and this is the Canary Yellow and Rainforest Green. And all we're going to do literally is just rub our ink pads across the front panel. So you don't have to be too particular about how you're laying down your colour. As you can see, I've put down my yellow first, and that's just giving that green a really nice little highlight, and it's all highlighted different aspects of our embossed design. So I think this looks absolutely wicked. I think the colours we've used, and because of that design, it gives you a real sort of jungle rainforest theme. So you could put some sort of jungle animals with this, and I think it would look absolutely perfect. But again, you can do this with any sort of colour combination that goes well together, and it'll give you a different look each time. So we finished our background panel, so we can go ahead and pop our card together. So I'm going to do a little bit of matte and layering for this card. So I've got my 7 by 5 inch blank card base, and then I've cut down a piece of black cardstock as one of our mats. So again, because the embossing folder is 7 by 5 and I've cut all of my cardstock to 7 by 5, I'm going to have to trim it down. So what you could do is before you start, you could cut your card piece down to the size you want it to be. That way you don't have to cut anything off it. You just want to make sure that you get it nice and square in your folder so you don't have a wonky design. A background like this would work really well for kids' crafts. So if perhaps you've got the grandkids coming over or you want to do a crafting activity with your kids, just give them a couple of ink pads and a design like this, and they'll be able to put together a background really easily. So all we're doing now is just popping our sentiments on. So I've just popped some foam pads behind it, just to lift it off the card and give it that little extra bit of dimension. So again, I really love this card. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Again, that sort of jungle theme because of the colours we've used, but I've just taken it in another direction to make a really quick and simple card. So I know I'm zooming through putting the cards actually together, but these cards really aren't taking that long to create. So let's get into our last technique. So for this one, we're going to be taking our ink pad and actually rubbing it onto the embossing folder before we run it through our die cutting machine. So I've got again my Prism World of Colour, and this is the Blue Lagoon, and I'm just going to rub this on the front panel of my embossing folder. And as it goes through our die cutting machine, it's going to press that colour into our design. So again, just rubbing all over the front panel of our embossing folder to just lay that colour down. So when you're happy with the coverage, you can go ahead and run that through your die cutting machine. So when you're putting your cardstock into your embossing folder, just make sure you don't sort of move it about because you don't want to smudge any of that colour onto your white cardstock before it's gone through your die cutting machine. So I've actually run this through my die cutting machine a couple of times, and each time I've re-inked my embossing folder just to add a little bit more colour into the background. So the most important thing when doing a technique like this is to make sure that you clean your embossing folder afterwards. So there will still be some ink residue in sort of the little nooks and crannies of your embossing folder, and what you don't want to happen is next time you come to use it, some of that ink is still in there and it transfers onto your new project. So just make sure that you sort of give it a really good clean and get rid of all of that ink. So I'm happy I've cleaned that up nicely. So let's take a look at the background that we created. So you can see the colour has laid down differently on different sections of this panel, and this is because of the way that we've inked up our embossing folder. I really love how it looks as it is, but I'm just going to try and even it up just a little bit. I'm just going to use my blue blending brush and just using the ink that's already in the brush, just to sort of lay down a little bit more blue colour, just to even it up slightly. I love how this background is coming together. It reminds me of that sort of blue and white china pattern you can get, so on plates and bowls and things. I just think it looks really lovely. It sort of looks quite elegant, quite classy, and I think it'll make a really fantastic background. So I'm happy with my background. I can go ahead and start putting my card together. So these are the elements I'm going to be using. So we've got two lovely little frogs here, and it says, "You make me so hoppy." So we're just going to cut down our panel again just to fit on our 7x5 inch card base. So we're really not taking too much off our panels to get this to fit in. So all I've done is just touch up the edges of my panel that I cut off, just to give it that nice little blue edge again. All we can do is just mat and layer it onto our card base. So once we've done that, we can adhere our sort of images onto the top of it. So we've got these two frogs here, and we've just put them on little foam pads just to give it a little bit of dimension. And we've got "You make me so hoppy." So I really love the way this card came out. I really like the background. Again, it reminds me of that sort of china pattern, and I just think it looks really effective. So it's just another really good example of how to use this embossing folder and get a completely different look than how we have before. So let's take a look at all the cards that we've created in today's video, and you'll be able to see just how different all of these cards look because we've used different techniques but with the same embossing folder. So I think my favourite technique from today's video has been colouring in our design. This has worked really well with this particular embossing folder, and I'll definitely be trying it again on other ones that I've got in my stash. So I hope today's video has given you some inspiration on how to use your embossing folders and create something a little bit different. I know it certainly has made me think about the products that I've got in my craft stash and how I can use them in lots of different ways. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks for watching and happy crafting!